Welcome to the
That's what
Keeping
got it.
Nostalgia Live show. I am your host, Billy Powell. As you can see with us is Coach Dave Schellhase, a Purdue All-American, the Chicago Bulls' first draft pick. He's going to chat with us a little bit about the NCAA draw. But mostly he's here for his book, which is the Schellhase story, which I have right here. And if you look really closely in the background, you can see that I have a bobblehead of Coach Schellhase. Coach Schellhase, thanks for taking some time to talk about your book, talk about the NCAA draw, Purdue basketball, and welcome.
Well, thanks, Billy. I'm looking forward to it, visiting with you. And, this is a big month. March is going to be a lot of interest and talk going on about college basketball.
Yeah, they don't call it March Madness for nothing, do they?
No,
they don't. So, what did you think about the draw last night with the Purdue Boilermakers?
Well, I watched a lot of the Big Ten tournament. I didn't watch a lot of the conference tournaments, but I did watch the Big Ten. And, Purdue lost in semifinals to Wisconsin. But all of those games toward the end were really good, well-played games. Illinois wound up beating Wisconsin yesterday. I think if you played that over, there's about 5 teams that could have won. I think Michigan State and Nebraska was also fun to watch too. And all of those teams are in the NCAA. So the Big Ten put 6 teams in there. I don't think the Big Ten was real strong toward the bottom of the league, but at the top of the league, I think there were some awfully good players and teams.
What will the Purdue Boilermakers have to do to get off the snide and get an NCAA championship this year?
Well, I think if we're going to talk about the NCAA, I think we had a kind of a strange year. I don't think there's a real strong team in the country, and I think it showed all year. Different teams bouncing into being number one. Houston, North Carolina, Kentucky was up there. Of course, Purdue was up there. Connecticut. I mean, it's wide open. And I think the way basketball's changed now is that in this tournament, I think this tournament's wide open. 4 of the 3 of the top number 1 seeds got beat in their own conference tournament. It shows you that anyone can win this thing. Purdue lost, Carolina lost, Iowa State hammered Houston. I mean, we just don't know who can come out of any of it. I think what's happening now is most college teams play the same. They all shoot 23s, and if you hit 10, you're going to win, and if you hit 4, you're going to lose. And to answer your question, Purdue has to shoot a decent 3-point percentage in order for them to advance, because they have something no one else has, and that's a 7'4" really good player inside. But if they don't hit the outside shot, it will be difficult for them to win.
It's interesting because I was watching last night. Of course, Indiana State University did not get in. You coached there for a little while. We'll talk about that because that's all in your book. But Indiana State, man, I don't know if they should be upset that they didn't get in, or they should enjoy all the publicity they're getting because they didn't get in.
Yeah, that's good. I thought about that myself today. They're the number 1 seed in the NIT. They're in the same bracket with Butler. They're playing at home. They're gonna come out okay, I think. And the NIT, I believe this year, the finals are at Butler Fieldhouse. So they have an opportunity to really make some hay here in the state of Indiana. The only other team, of course, in the NCAA tournament from the state is Purdue. So Indiana State had a great year. I agree that they probably should have been in the tournament. I'm sure they would have liked to have been in the tournament because they have possibility to win some games.
What do you think about, Purdue gets a hard time in basketball, especially the past 5 or 6 years, exiting out in that first round or that second round. What would it mean for Purdue to win that national championship? I know you guys won a national championship in 1932, but what would that mean for the Purdue Boilermakers and the Purdue, the alumni?
Well, first of all, Purdue is Matt Painter's done a great job at Purdue. As you know, as an Indiana basketball fan, uh, his recruiting, his longevity, the fact he's been there 16 years, his staff is exceptional. Their recruiting has been great. And what's happened, I think, in years past, when Bob Knight was coach at Indiana, they were getting the Mr. Basketballs and they were getting the elite athletes in Indiana. Purdue gets them now. Purdue's recruiting is phenomenal. Indiana, because of changing coaches, the instability in their program, the expectations put upon their coaching and by their fan base has made it really difficult. I've seen this thing go in cycles, years, for years. Indiana was strong, and then Purdue take over for a while when we had Mount and Keller and those players. And then IU came back when Knight was there, and now Purdue's on top. It would mean a lot to Purdue, and unfortunately, we're winning Big Ten championships, but for the quote fan, they want to win the NCAA. Now, how realistic that is, I don't. Purdue has a unique style of play. If you look back for the last 10 years, they've had 4, 5, 7-footers, and they play different than other people. That works to their advantage because a lot of players don't have a Zach Edey or Haas or can't think of some of the other inside players we've had, Travion. But, when we get into the quickness and the up and down game, Purdue suffered a bit. We've had trouble guarding their guards. That was noticeable in the Wisconsin game. The point guard for Wisconsin, he got to the hole a bunch of times and made some tremendous offensive plays because we don't have that quick ball handling guard. So I think tempo is a big thing. If Purdue can keep the game slow, they're going to win.
I know the brackets just came out yesterday, but do you have a Final Four pick? Does Coach Schellhase have a Final Four pick?
It's interesting. I've thought a little bit about that, knowing we'd be on. I watched the CBS show, and that was interesting. It was interesting that every one of them picked UConn to win the championship. Also, all 4 of those fellows picked Purdue to get to the Final Four. So I would like that to happen. I would like Purdue to get to the Final Four. But I do think the tournament is kind of wide open. I think UConn, based on what other people have said, probably will get there. I think Purdue has the best chance to get there. I think the teams that are in their bracket, like Creighton, Tennessee, are not that quick. They're tempo teams too. And Purdue's really hard to beat if they can get the ball into Edey and so forth. I think the other ones are wide open. They've said that Houston, I've seen Houston over the years, or I should say Sampson coach teams over the years play great the regional weekend and lose by 20 in the finals or vice versa. So, Iowa State just hammered them. So I think anything can happen. I mean, Houston could win. It's wide open. Again, the team that gets hot. I mean, Connecticut won last year. Every game was more than 10 points. So We'll find out, but I think there'll be, as usual, a lot of upsets. But I think there's so many teams that are even. Look at the top five in the Big Ten. I mean, all of them are the same, really. I mean, it's who's playing well, who's shooting the ball.
Coach, playing for Purdue, being a Boilermaker, and there's that rivalry of that Purdue and Indiana thing. What do you think about the state of Indiana University basketball coming from a Boilermaker?
I think they're in trouble. I think they're in trouble mainly because of what I talked about earlier. Is they're not getting that good Indiana player like they used to. There are players that Purdue has. I mean, we've got two or three Mr. Basketballs and some others that were very close, number twos. It's been a long time since Indiana has gotten that kind of player out of our state. I think the other thing that Illinois is not putting out the players, especially the Chicago area, like they were 20 years ago either. This was an area that Indiana was very good at recruiting at. They had Isaiah Thomas, they had their Thomas, the other Thomas that passed away. They had a number of players from Illinois that were, that was a good recruiting area for them. And nowadays there aren't as many players in Chicago area as there were. So I think it's going to take some time for them to put it together. I mean, this year they had a pretty good inside game, but they had no outside game, no real defensive abilities in the backcourt, and they've got a lot of work to do. And I don't have an answer. They have a lot of impatient fans, but they've got to find someone that can make inroads in the state and let them. It takes time. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that Purdue was behind the eight ball in Indiana, well, with Oladipo and the kid from Washington. They pounded Purdue. So, it goes in cycles. And right now, Purdue's at the top of that cycle.
Do you think that cycle needs a coaching change at Indiana University?
I have no comment about that because I don't know. I don't like the way Indiana, they seem to play pretty hard for them. I mean, I don't know. I think the big thing is, even if they don't make a change, they need to get someone in there that's going to take over because of age, really. I think that even if he gets it turned around the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to need someone that can recruit the state carrying forward.
Coming from a basketball coach, just a little bit before we get to your book, which is what we're here for, what do you think about this NIL and a basketball coach having a different team every year? From a former college basketball coach, what do you think that how much harder is it to coach basketball today than it was when you coached basketball?
Well, it's terrible. It's terrible for the mid-majors. I mean, the Indiana States, the Evansvilles, if they get a good player, I'll give you an example. We had a great player at Indiana State that I recruited and coached named John Sherman Williams. If John Williams would be in today's age, we probably would have been lucky to have him 1 year, because a bigger school would have seen that, I missed on that kid. We should have offered him before. Now, not only that, but they now have money to give, which they used to not have. But this idea of, it's like free agency with no rules. I mean, it's great for the players, but for the coaches, I mean, I don't know how they survive. Again, Purdue has been very, very fortunate. They haven't had anyone leave, and they've had the number of people come in. So if you can keep your players, that's a plus. So yes, I think we've seen a lot, Saban in football, the coach from Villanova leaving, they don't want to put up with that. Now, what I would like to see, I would like to see this stuff advertised. I'd like to see the media get a hold of how much these guys are getting to play, because if I was an alumni and I was putting out a lot of money and these guys turned out to not to be any good, I'm not going to give them much money anymore. So, I mean, it still comes down to the coaches picking the right players and getting the right chemistry for them in order to win. But, this is actually, for the most part, it's going to make the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's kind of the way it is. I noticed now we, had the NIT, and now there's a couple other tournaments. I mean, if you have a good player, well, Tennessee's best player was a Division II player last year. So, their coaches miss on players, and this is their way of correcting their errors. Is if I'm IU or Purdue and I don't offer a scholarship to a guy like John Williams, and he turns out to be a great player, well, I can always get him the second time because I got the money to buy him. And you can't blame the player. They want to play at the best level they can play at and get the best reward they can get. So great for the players, terrible overall for college basketball. But, some of these teams, I'd like to know what these guys are really getting, because to me, that would make it more interesting as a fan. Not only can they complain about the guy can't shoot, but they can complain about how much money we're giving them.
Coach, the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame has a lot of stuff going on during the month of March, and you're really included with that. Tell us a little bit about the new induction class, where it's held, and what's your passion and love for that game of basketball from the state of Indiana.
Well, I've been on the executive board for the Hall of Fame, and it's really been a good experience. I've met a lot of good people and learned a lot. And it's a wonderful museum they have in Newcastle, Indiana. If anybody ever is in that area, it's worth a stop. It's right off the highway, an easy stop in Newcastle. And this year, I'm happy we have two guys from Evansville going in. One's Larry Weatherford, that was a tremendous player at Evansville, Boston. And then Larry played at Purdue, where he started with Rick Mount in '70 and scored over 1,000 points. So he's very worthy. I also have a high school teammate of mine from Evansville North, Joe Mullen, who played with me, graduated a year ahead of me in high school. And then he went to George Washington University and played. And Joe is going in as a coach. He coached Evansville Boss City to the Final Four in '82 and had 2 undefeated seasons. So it's great to have someone that I'm familiar with intimately to get in the Hall of Fame. Evansville's a town down at the very end of our state that often doesn't get a lot of notoriety. So I'm happy about that. I think the other inductee that's going in Wednesday night at our annual banquet is Dan Dockage from Indiana and from Gary. So, I think those are the people that I'm interested in seeing going in. But we have some other inductees, our silver anniversary team, and it's a big night. And, then we work on trying to get people in next year. There's plenty of eligible people.
And that is an absolutely gorgeous swag you have on there with that Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame zip tie there. I will.
Well, thank you, Billy, and I like your producer.
Why, thank you very much. I will inbox you my address so that you can send that one to me. Coach, what happens? What happens in life where you're like, I've got to write a book? I mean, what's that light bulb that goes off in your head? When did it happen? the Schellhase story. It's a great book. I got my copy autographed, of course, because I know Coach Schellhase very well. And I mean, what just goes off in your head that says, I think I need to write a book?
Well, it's I think rewarding. I think what happened, with me is I had a lot of things happen in my life, a lot of them good, and a lot of them not so good. And I have, I taught for years, I coached for years, I played a long time, and I always had people say, you should write a book. Well, I didn't know how to write a book. I mean, I found out though that if I could get some help, and I had somebody that I met, and I hope that we can do another podcast with him involved, a guy named Tom Speaker. And I read a book that he wrote. It was called From the Cornfields of Indiana to the Beaches of Iwo Jima. And it was about an Indiana high school basketball team that after Pearl Harbor hit, where they went in the war. And I thought, this is really a good book. And I knew he lived in West Lafayette, and I got a hold of him. And he and I got together, and we decided that I would tape my story and he would write it, and then we'd edit it together, and we just kind of kept going. And we became very good friends in the process. So what happened was, I don't think he signed up for how long it took us. It took us a couple of years to do it, but it was truly a labor of love. And what I found out with myself is I'm kind of an accidental saver. I have all kinds of things. I found pictures I didn't even remember having, and so forth. So the story basically is the story of my life, and it's the story of growing up in Evansville, Indiana. My dad was a World War II veteran, and I grew up in right in the middle of the baby boomers in the 50s and 60s. It talks about my athletic experiences, what it was like growing up in Evansville, and so forth. So if you're from Southern Indiana, you might have an interest in the book. From there, I talk about playing in high school, and I played in a golden era in Evansville, especially. My senior year in high school, we had 3 teams in the top 10 in Indiana. Evansville Bossy, which wound up winning the state championship that year, beat us in the final game of the sectional. And Evansville Rex Mundi, which was a Catholic school in Evansville, was also a top 10 team that year. And Bossy went on and as I said, won the state championship. We had Division I players on all 3 teams. Gary, who was the captain of IU his senior year, myself, and of course Bob Greasy and Tom Niemeyer. So it was a great time. A little later there in the 60s is when Bob Ford led Evansville North to the state championship, and Larry Weatherford was another great player, a Division I player. So the 60s was, a lot of really good athletes in Evansville. Then I talk about college, recruiting, how I picked Purdue, why I picked Purdue, my career at Purdue. If you're a Big Ten fan, it's so different now. They could take one team from the Big Ten. That's it. Just coming up, there's 6. I mean, if you can imagine, one team. And of course, I played. Indiana had the Van Arsdale twins. Michigan had Cassie Russell and Bill Bunton. Minnesota had Lou Hudson. This was the heyday of Evansville College with Jerry Sloan and Larry Humes. And we played all those people. And the book talks a lot about them. Then the book talks about, as you say, being the first choice of the Chicago Bulls ever. Well, my pro experience wasn't very long, but it was a different era. And we talk about how the NBA was then compared to how it is now. And there were only 10 teams. My first year, there were only 10 players. There were only 100 players even that could play in the NBA. So that was eye-opening too. I also talk about my career then. You know, I eventually got into coaching, and it kind of follows my career as we went. Now, one of the things I wanted to do with this book was to talk about how to play basketball, um, what to teach kids, how do you become a better player, and then I wanted to talk about coaching, what I learned in coaching, especially philosophy, not the X and O's, but how to treat people, what to look for in a player, and so forth. So that's in the book too. So if you're interested in helping a youngster be a better player, or if you're interested in coaching, I have had a couple of people tell me about how much this has helped them coaching their daughter's team or their son's team, and so forth. So, and then there were a lot of, stories. I'm meeting the Three Stooges. People ask about that. Going down in a plane crash with a team from North Dakota State. A lot of things that have happened. The other thing that I'm proud of is 39 years of sobriety. This had an effect on not only my career in a somewhat negative way, but in a positive way that I probably wouldn't be here. So if someone is interested in learning about alcoholism and learning how to be sober or help someone else be sober, this is a plus for this book. So it's not only a story of my life, it's a story about playing, coaching, and sobriety. And I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to maintain sobriety. I've met a lot of wonderful people along the way, and this I find has helped. The book's doing very well. I mean, a lot of people that have read it like it. It's all new to me. It's a learning experience. What I want to do is have fun with it a couple of years, being on your show every now and then, and doing things like this. If I can, I'm going to set up a table at the Indiana Coaches Association, their clinic, and these are people that need to read this. They're out there, they're coaching, and they need to understand that living, watching what you're doing is important in your career.
Coach, we'll include the QR code and how everybody can get the book. But alcoholism is a nasty subject. And how do you feel about talking about it?
Well, I feel okay talking about it because I think that there's a stigma attached, and that stigma can hurt people. People can look down. It's a disease, and it's something that can be put into remission, and it's put into remission by not drinking. As long as you don't drink, the symptoms of this disease are not going to expand and carry on. You learn how not to drink just as well as you learn how to drink. You learn some tricks, some ideas, some support groups. You do what you have to do. Some people struggle, and I know that, but I don't hold it against them because I always feel that they can always get another chance. You can learn how to be sober just as much as you can learn how to party or learn how to drink. And I think that people should realize that if they have a loved one, if they have someone they are worried about, there is hope. But you can't just sit back and expect the addict to correct themselves. It isn't going to happen. So they need to be active, proactive, And we've heard all those terms, and hopefully that young coach, that young teacher can learn something from this book.
And the book is called The Schellhase Story. I'll include the QR code and the links within the comment section. Coach, how difficult was it to put together the book, as in like a time lapse?
Well, actually, again, this is where my friend Tom Speaker came in, because he's done a number of books. There's a lot of things I don't even know other than to take his advice, to follow his advice, etc. And what I'm trying to learn now is how to promote the book, what to do, that type of thing. So it's been fun, but it also has been a learning experience that as I said earlier, I just want to go like crazy for a couple years and get the book out, meet people, and have some fun with it.
And it's called The Schellhase Story. I will have all the links within the comment section and within the description. I absolutely love it. Coach Schellhase and I have had a great relationship together, and one thing leads to another, and that's alcoholism. And I've been sober, and I've had a great relationship with Coach. So, Coach Dave Schellhase, thank you so much for spending some time with us, talking about your book, the upcoming tournament, and this was awesome.
Well, I certainly enjoyed it, and I think that people will enjoy it if they purchase the book. And anybody, it tells how to get a hold of me also. So thanks, Billy, for having me.